Most heartfelt greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlethems. I eagerly welcome you to Sturgeon's most premier station, Dusklight Radio, hosted by yours truly, the weary but willful, frail but frivolous, and morosely mutational Everett J. Blackwell. Now, I know you're used to my usual spiel, but in order to bring you more transmissions every week, we'll be providing a slightly shorter version for non-Sturgeon or non-feature-length stories to ensure we can still provide our unique Dusklight brand, thank our patrons, and, most importantly, promote the authors we work with. You can, as always, skip these intros using the timestamp below, and of course, all Sturgeon content will be early access on the Patreon. Thank you all for joining us on this calm and balmy night in Sturgeon. Tonight we feature one of a few guest authors that will be appearing on the channel, and this one is a new one. Their name is Jam Franz, and their tale, The Nowhere Stairs, is a delightfully terrifying account of an upper floor appearing in a home that they are trying to sell. The problem is, it should only be on the ground floor. Jam Franz is a superb new talent in the horror space whose work you can find in the description below and at their subreddit. Please show them some love in the comments and tell them the Dusklight sent you. Stay tuned after the story for more info on our contest, the NFC book release, you heard me right, and a thank you to our patrons. Special thanks must be given first to Mandy Mo for the original beauteous image you see when you look at our page, to Sir Gorky for the brand new rendering of yours truly, and the truly accurately horrifying rendition of our humble studio, to Dark Somnium for being such a gracious and terrifying sponsor of the channel, and lastly, our music is sourced and provided in no order by Cryo Chamber and Vato Elements and Dark Somnium with gracious thanks. If you enjoy these intros and want to see more, please ensure you've got notifications on and leave a comment for every video you encounter. With that, the sun has set and dusk has crawled into the studio once more. Whether you're working, prepping to sleep, or evading the formless void that will one day consume us all, Blackwell is here to soothe your ears and captivate your soul. Now, close your eyes and take a deep breath. The scene has been set and the light is on. It's time to walk towards it. I took a deep breath as I approached the house. I'd parked my shitty 2010 Mazda hatchback down the block off Dewey Avenue. I didn't want the patchy paint job and plastic sheet duct tape over the shattered back passenger side window to diminish the curb appeal. It really was a beautiful home. The clean, white siding stood out stark against the deep green of the trees framing it from behind. The smiling face of my new boss, Wendy, who was kind enough to hire me when I moved to Grey Hill a few months back, stared up at me from the for sale sign on the manicured lawn that was several times larger than my apartment. To calm my nerves, I kept running through the details in my head as I approached. Built in 1991, 1 story, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2,800 square feet, entirely renovated within the past year. Every time I walked inside, I was reminded of my initial surprise at the fact that the family had wanted to sell it all. It had sat vacant for years and they'd completely renovated, but they had moved back out before they would even have time to enjoy it. I set the AC to a comfortable temperature, placed finger foods out on the brand new granite countertops, generic music that could best be described as chill playing, and had a candle on the warmer. I'd heard a recent story of a realtor lighting candles throughout a house and forgetting to extinguish them before locking up. I'll just say that synthetic carpet is highly flammable, so it's a good thing that the home had still been covered by the seller's insurance. I'm still new to this, and this was one of my first solo events, but I felt like I was ready. I mean, I had to be. I needed to pay my rent and buy groceries. The month before, I had to choose between one of the two, and that just wasn't going to cut it again. Despite having poured all that money and time into the home, the prior owners insisted on selling it for far less than it was worth. They'd already packed up and taken everything with them, trying to distance themselves from the process as much as possible. They refused to set foot back inside, opting to instead answer my questions I had on the phone with intense, one-word answers. The longest sentence any of them ever spoke to me was an impassioned, "Please do whatever you can to get rid of it." Despite all of that, I was feeling good, and I had an hour to spare before the open house started and people started streaming in. To pass the time and further calm my nerves, I decided to wander around as another last-minute refresher for any questions I'd get. I walked around, circling through the kitchen and living room, past the stairs. Wait, I stopped so abruptly that I nearly tripped myself. The stairs were not there any of the times I'd been to the house. I was sure of it. But since staircases don't typically appear out of thin air, I thought maybe I was so nervous that I was just losing my damn mind. I decided to check my paperwork to make sure I wasn't conflating it with a different house I'd been to recently. It did confirm that this was a one-story. The long set of worn wooden stairs, they seemed old, as if the owners had ignored them during their renovations, led to a small landing and door. There was no second floor visible from the outside, though. There was just physically no room for it. Despite defying logic, it was clearly there. I hesitantly decided that I might as well check it out in case I got questions about it. The old wooden steps creaked in protest as I climbed. As I walked through the door, it felt like I'd stepped several decades back in time. When I cleared the threshold, I felt a painful pressure in my ears, as if I were on an airplane making a steep landing. A musty smell of old, forgotten things permeated throughout. There was a small extra kitchen, another family room, a bathroom, a bedroom, and a locked room with a glass door. A full-length curtain on the other side obscured the interior from my view. I stopped to take it in, and the curtain seemed to flutter, as if there was a slight breeze or something moving behind it. The bedroom had wallpaper consisting of ornate patterns and black velvet flowers. The place looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, but there was no dust or other signs of age-related wear. A sudden sound from around the corner made me jump. A radio had begun playing in the living room, filling the second floor with staticky sound, as if stuck between stations. The soft, lime green sofa on shag carpet and TV that looked older than I was made the place feel like it was straight out of the 70s, despite that being a couple decades before the house was supposedly built. There was another odd, curtained room off the living room, too. It looked identical to the first, but the door was open, just a crack. I couldn't figure out why at the time, but that made me nervous. It didn't help that despite it being only 6 p.m. in July, it was pitch black outside the windows up there. I couldn't make out any of the surrounding trees or homes. They appeared to have been swallowed up by the thick night beyond. The cheery colors of the interior suddenly felt like a thin veneer painted over something much, much darker. I decided I'd spend enough time up there and couldn't help but think, I hope the upstairs disappears again by the time the guests arrive, which was a sentence I never imagined I'd find myself uttering. When I rounded the corner back into the tiny kitchen, the changes made me shiver. Cabinets were open that had been closed, but worse, the doors to the stairs were just gone. I felt raw panic creeping in at the sheer wrongness of it. The top floor couldn't have been more than 1,000 square feet. I was fairly confident that there was no way I had just misplaced the exit, but decided to retrace my steps. Maybe I hadn't come in through the kitchen after all. I went back down the hall to the bedroom and bathroom. I couldn't help but notice that the door to the curtained room was gone. I leaned into the bedroom with the fuzzy wallpaper and noticed that the glass door was in there now, open just a bit more. Something about the faint sound coming from behind it made me realize I didn't want to stick around for when it opened all the way. I walked quickly back and stuck my head into the living room. The curtained room that had been there was gone. The door to the stairs I had taken up there had yet to reappear, but a new door had, though, at the back of the kitchen. I debated and eventually decided to open it. To my immense relief, they were stairs. I laughed, glad that I'd just gotten turned around. But the more I looked, the more I realized it wasn't right. It was dark at the bottom, so much so that part of the steps blended into and then disappeared into a blackness as velvety as the old wallpaper. These stairs also looked much, much older than the rest of the house appeared to be. Before I realized what I was doing, I had already walked down several steps. I had an inexplicable urge to continue downward. Something was down there that I needed. I'm not sure how, but I could feel that was old, ancient maybe. It needed me too. I was there, and it had waited so long. It felt good to be wanted. I felt right, descending into the darkness. Its elation was infectious. It vibrated through the air. No, elation isn't the right word. It was the yearning of something hollow, dangerous, looking to be full. It was needful. I was terrified. I knew something horrible awaited me, and yet I kept continuing towards it against my will. In my mind, fear and self-preservation were fighting a losing battle against whatever it was down there that had its hooks in me, pulling me towards it. The air was electric with its excitement. My foot began to disappear into that horrid, beautiful, foreboding darkness. In the distance, a door opened and closed, shattering the silence. Someone was calling out to me. It was a light in the dark. I blinked and suddenly remembered. The open house. In that moment, the connection between the thing in the darkness and myself was broken. I took advantage of the distraction and ran back up the stairs, slamming the door behind me. Someone was downstairs looking for me. I ran through the kitchenette, and to my relief, the door to lead downstairs had returned. The real stairs. I could have cried in relief, but didn't dare blink or let anything obscure my vision, lest it disappear again. The door to the curtained room had also moved again, right next to the exit. It opened towards the back hall so that I could have peered inside from where I was standing. It was halfway open, and my instincts told me, do not look in there. Don't look. As I reached for the knob of the door to downstairs, a soft crying permeated the air. It was coming from the curtained room. It was alien, unlike anything I had heard before. It was not a mournful sound. Don't look. My hand tightened around the knob as the cry became louder, closer to the entrance of the partially open door. Closer still. I darted down the stairs, only pausing once I'd reached the bottom to look over my shoulder, only letting out a breath after ensuring nothing had followed me. Someone had shown up early. I must have made a terrible first impression as I came flying down the stairs, sweaty, eyes wide with terror. I tried to get my shit together and think of some way to explain my terrible state. But before I could even begin to figure out what to say, he gestured to my ears. Are you okay? I gingerly touched first one, then the other, and sure enough, a small trickle of blood was leaking from each. I hadn't even noticed, but it had been dripping down, staining the collar of my blazer. I managed to collect myself a bit before the rest of the potential buyers came filing in, and let my hair down to hide the bloodstains. The rest of the night was a blur, honestly. I was on edge, ready to leave and lock myself in my apartment, sleep with all the lights on. I'd decided I was never going into a dark room again. I could barely focus on the open house. I hoped, more than I'd ever hoped for anything before, that no one would go up the stairs or make me go up there again. Not a single guest approached them, asked me about them, or even looked at them. Instead, they dodged around the staircase like there was an invisible obstacle there. For a while, as I nodded and answered questions robotically, I wondered if I had imagined the whole thing. Was I losing my grip on reality? The only thing that confirmed to me that I didn't have some sort of waking nightmare was when the first guest stopped me on his way out. He told me to take care, that it was going to be okay, and I almost hugged him. I think he saved my life by giving me some sort of anchor to reality. He took one last look at me, and then very clearly stared up at the door at the top of the stairs for quite a while before disappearing out the front door. After making my rounds through the house, once it seemed like the last straggler had left, I stuck my head outside to verify. There was still one last car in the driveway, meaning someone was still in the house. I could just barely make out faint footsteps. They were coming from above my head, and I called out a cautious, "Hello?" The steps stopped and never started back up. I darted up the stairs, not daring to enter again, opting instead to peer in from the landing. I don't know how to explain it, but even before I saw that door leading to the thing in the darkness was ajar, I knew I was already too late. I could feel that while I was not alone, I was the only person left in that house. I waited downstairs for hours, hoping I was wrong, hoping they'd make their way back down. When they didn't, I wasn't sure what else to do. I locked up, and I went home. After a few days, the car still hasn't moved. I called the police to report it abandoned. Maybe it was due to my crazed and bloodied appearance, or maybe the visitors could pick up on the general sense of wrongness. But to my immense relief, no offers were made after that first showing. I knew from the moment that I had felt myself inch towards the hungry thing in that deep darkness that I could not let anyone buy that house. The nameless, unaccounted for visitor that had disappeared into it, well, that just confirmed it. Yesterday, I made a call to the homeowner and asked one final question, one that could be answered with a simple yes or no. I had another open house tonight. I made sure the AC was set to a comfortable temperature. I put out the food and got the music playing before I lit all the candles I brought. I placed myself at the bottom of those stairs. Most guests walked past without so much as noticing them, but every so often, someone's eyes would flit upwards, staring at the entrance to a second floor that did not exist. I didn't move from that spot until I ensured that every single person left that house. After they did, I went room to room, moved one of the lit candles so that the flames licked up against a curtain, nudged a few onto the synthetic carpet. I placed one on the landing at the top of the stairs for good measure. I waited for the roar indicating the spread of the flames before I shut the door and closed the lockbox. As I stared out at the car, which had remained abandoned in the driveway for weeks, I could almost hear the strained voice of the prior owner. Please, do whatever you can to get rid of it. I know that I made the right decision. A reminder that in almost all horror tales, going up the stairs seems to be infinitely worse than going down them. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of our other transmissions. We are adding them regularly and we'd love to have you as part of the Dusklight family by subscribing, hitting the bell of stairs, and leave a comment with stories you'd love for my many-legged runners to find. Don't forget, our contest is still ongoing and more info can be found on our community page. We'll be offering 3 tiers of prizes and are accepting any art, poetry, fiction, haikus, or music if it relates to Sturgeon. Email your entry to dusklightradio@outlook.com with the subject line Dusklight Contest to enter. Now, a quick aside, listeners, the Beneath the Static novella is coming off of the Amazon store page for a bit due to reasons we'll explain in the coming days, and it will be back up soon. But in its place will be the NFC. That's right, after a long delay, this book will take place at Beneath the Static in the contest and be available to all of you for release on August the 8th. Mark those calendars. I want to thank all our patrons for making this possible. If you want to sign up, it's as little as $1 and you get exclusive content, early access videos and stories, updates and more. But times are tough and we will always be grateful for support no matter what form it comes in. Financial, spiritual, corporeal, maniacal, or whatever you want. It really helps us out. Dusklight gives thanks to our Sturgeonite faithfuls Ashabel, Haley Clark, PRDDL12, Sabrina Alexander, Jason Webb, Laree W., and Casper Noren. Purple Crayon Eaters Amara, Julia Krager, Candyman Gloving, Max Square, Feeny Von Karma, the Newman Borders, whose art is up in our community tab right now, Death 31, and Heather Cayley. Our janitors Alex Nunez, Amy Sean, Scott, Arkham Cookie, and new recruit Sabil Eclipse. Our nightmare detectives Adrian Rodriguez, Ethan Nelson, Fox Clifford, and Gianni Di Lorena. Our Void Walker Professor Creepypasta, and our ever-expanding Blackwell family, Jackal Blackwell, Clue Blackwell, Tabitha Blackwell, and Papa Kyle Blackwell. We'll see you all bright and early for Dusklight orientation should you join the Patreon. Purple crayons and existential dread will be provided. And one last time, listeners, close your eyes and breathe with me. Remember, no matter how bad things are, how cruel people can be, and how heavy your shoulders may feel with the weight of the world bearing down on them, Dusklight will always be here to lift the load and provide you with some respite. Drink some water. Watch a video about the history of Dream Pop, and sleep on the cool side of the pillow with the window open and the stars twinkling down on you. Start and end each day with kindness in your heart. You matter, you are loved, and every day is another chance. I'll see you again when the sun sets and dusk enters the station.